Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 33 of the Survival Project. Today's episode is with Levi, who's a talented photographer based in Las Vegas. Levi shares the experience of initially being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and since the episode actually aired, he's got a diagnosis of Crohn's disease. Levi went through years of symptoms, misdiagnosis, and also gives a deep insight into what it's like navigating the American healthcare system. It ain't easy. Another side of our conversation was the reality of living with IBD while also being self-employed. And we also do a deep dive into the importance of becoming the person who's in charge of your own healthcare. Now, before we get into it, I just want to say a massive thank you to Western Auto Parts in More for sponsoring today's episode. Support allows me to keep building the podcast and sharing these stories, and I really, really appreciate it. For all your motoring needs, contact 091 79014. They're located in More Business Park, and all details are in the description. Let's get into it. So, Levi, welcome to the Survival Project. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much. Like I was saying to you before when we met that you're the only person that I actually know that deals with IBD. And so it's really cool to have a conversation with you and to be able to talk to you about this.
It's great to just have an open dialogue on our life experience. So I'm buzzing to get into it. For everyone who's listening, would you mind diving into a bit of your story for us?
My story started, I think, about 3 years ago. I started having like a lot of severe diarrhea and it wouldn't go away. And then one day it just turned into blood. And I had no idea. I was like, what the hell is happening? At the same time, I had had a colonoscopy and I had had a fissure, and I was literally just got an email from that doctor because she was gone out of town. And so I saw a follow-up doctor because of all the blood. And he said, oh, this blood is just from your fissure. And there was no differential diagnosis. There was no, let's try other things or do some more testing, right? It was just like, this is where the blood is coming from. And so I went another year or before I actually got a diagnosis. So I was living with this blood thinking that it would eventually heal. And it started to happen like attacks happening. Like all of a sudden I would just be like, oh my God, there's just blood everywhere. And because part of the surgery that I had didn't heal. So whenever there was anything going on, everything would just leave my rectum. And I was working on a show here in Las Vegas, and I was running all the wardrobe. So I would be backstage changing 3 people in 60 seconds. And then, I don't want to say who I was working for, but just because it's a celebrity thing, but I would be in the middle of this very big show with fire blowing up out of the stage 10 feet from my body. And I'm like literally going, ah, and turning and running to the bathroom. And it was a nightmare. And then I would be so weak that I couldn't function, and I would have so many cramps happening, and I just didn't know what to do. So finally I was like, this has got to be something more than that. And so then I went to see a gastro doctor, and I had a second colonoscopy, and they were like, yeah, but I had the colonoscopy from a colorectal surgeon. So the colorectal surgeon can say, yeah, this is what we see, but then I've got to go see a gastro doctor. And then the gastro doctor was like, well, I have to go back up in there. So, cause I have to see it. And I go, here's the results. Here it is. Can we just start a medication? And he was like, no, I have to see it. And I find out on the internet that's kind of a thing, because I'm pretty sure that doctors here get paid a lot of money for colonoscopies and endoscopies and procedures. Obviously they get paid a lot of money. So of course everybody's like, yep, you're a doctor. The first thing they say is, oh, we need to go back up in there. Oh, we need to go back up and check. Oh, we need to go back up and check. So I had another colonoscopy. So that was 3. And then I know, then finally, so like a year and a half maybe after I figured it all out, or I was trying to figure it out, I got a diagnosis for ulcerative colitis, which was great. And then I left town for 6 weeks, went to Europe on a big work trip, and then came back and I went on the drug Tremfya. And they were like, and here's where the story gets very interesting, because my doctor said, well, your insurance says you have to go on this drug for 4 to 6 months before you can get onto Skyrizi, which is, and I don't know what you have abroad. I know that it's pharmaceutical, so I'm sure they're everywhere. So Skyrizi is the drug that you want to go on. So he said, let's do this for 6 months and see how it goes. And I was like, okay. So I'd started Tremfya infusions every month. Then I went to injections and nothing was changing. If anything, it got worse. Then he goes, okay, you've been doing this for 6 months and let's do another calprotectin test and check for cryptosporidium and all of these other things that tests your inflammation markers inside your gut, inside your colon specifically, and they do it through a poop test. 0 to 5 is an average human. 500 is severe, and I was at 1500. And then I did another calprotectin test in the fall, and I was at 3,200. And that was after 6 months on Tremfya, which was like one of the big everybody does this and it works drugs. And so my inflammation markers doubled. So he was like, okay, let's get you on the Skyrizi. Well, the way the American health system works takes time to get into that. So I recently had my 3rd infusion, recently had a test, and yesterday got the calprotectin test back now it's at like 1,400. And what I learned is that you have to do your own research, and we can talk about that later and be your own advocate. And let's make sure we talk about that because that's a key to the whole thing. And but what I learned was that the Skyrizi, the way Skyrizi is designed, is that your inflammation markers should go down within 2 months. And so the 2-month is your marker. And then if your calprotectin test has not gone down by 50%, then your body's not responding to it. So that's kind of where I'm at today. Like the inflammation inside my gut has gone down by 50%, which is good. But I think there's like a whole lot of dietary things that need to change and shift. And I have to deal with that, another colonoscopy to see where we are, because now I'm having issues on the right side of my colon and a lot of pain. And we're trying to figure out what that is. I had a CAT scan that said it wasn't Crohn's, which is good. But so yeah, kind of that's my little IBD story, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you have to go through all this while you're self-employed, you have your own business, you're trying to make your health well and obviously run your own business comes with serious pressures. How are you at the moment juggling being your own boss and dealing with an IBD flare?
I don't even know where to begin, because there's something about the exhaustion and the pain that you go through when your belly is so swollen and hard. And it's literally like, I am a man, okay? I am very, very aware of that. But the only thing I can compare this to is carrying around a 9-month baby, like you're about to give birth. Like that's just what it feels like all the time. Like there's just constant pressure all inside my gut. And so being a business owner, I'm a photographer, right? So I'm a creative freelancer. So I only get paid when I go to work. And the way that I get customers is through marketing, networking, meeting people, going to events. I work specifically in the Broadway, television, film, Vegas stage world. So meeting people and having people know who I am is the most important thing. And I don't like to leave the house now. I can't do any of that. And literally friends have just kind of shimmied off to the wayside, and connections are like, where have you been? Like, what's going on? But there are times when I like realize, oh my God, I haven't been able to do anything except go to the studio and shoot and come home and sleep. I haven't been able to do anything like that for like a month. And you're like, oh, where's the time gone? I haven't done any networking. I haven't done any of this. And even doing anything really and is very difficult, including being creative, right? So a lot of times I need to be creating creative posts or creating reels online, posting things and retouching images and making sure I'm sending out the right messaging and am I running ads? Like, what am I doing? And I just can't. Like, I don't, like, and I have no one, honestly, I was saying before, like, I have no one that goes through any of this that really understands this except for you. And so it's been very frustrating for me trying to navigate it. But honestly, I think the message that I found for me that worked is really like coming into alignment with who I am as a person and energetically opening myself up to miracles, specifically financial miracles, and trusting that God's got my back and that everything's going to be okay. And when I tell you that when I started trusting that, the miracles that happened were like completely insane. And so I've been provided for, right? Very well in ways that in literal, like, oh, here's how you're going to make money. There you go. And, I don't know if you saw my account, but there's like one very specific miracle that I do like to talk about. But let's talk about that later because it's going to divert our conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I can't wait to dive into it. But I just want to touch on the isolation you spoke on there, because chronic illness, like, it's enforced isolation. And especially, as you said yourself, you don't know anyone around you that you can speak to about what you're going through, because people don't really get it. And when you try to explain your symptoms, people be like, oh, I had food poisoning before. They'll try to compare it of what their understanding of maybe what you're going through, which might not even be a sliver of the experience you're having. And as you said, the pressures of being self-employed and run your own business, they're torturous on a normal day with no health issues going on, because you are your own boss and you're fighting for survival every day to build your career and put food on the table. And then you put something into your life that completely inhibits your ability to be yourself. And obviously you're completely passionate about what you do, the glitz, the glam, and everything that comes with it. But now you have obstacles put in your path from you being yourself. Do you find that the chronic illness that you're experiencing at the moment has really put a hampering on your own identity and your future prospects?
You know, that is such an amazing question that I like. When you said it, I almost cried because I never thought of it that way. Because yes, like it changes everything. Like when you are dealing with constant pain, whether you're in pain talking to the person that you're talking to, you are recovering or you're medicated, right? And for me, that medication has to be marijuana because they put me on dicycline and something else. One of them was 4 pills a day, 4 times a day, and my body just didn't respond to them. But when I smoke marijuana, it's literally my entire gut just is here and it goes to there. And it takes off like 30% of the pain and the pressure, right? And so, you know, number one, that affects your energy levels, that affects a lot. But after going through all of that and then walking into like a social situation, like at that point, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to network. Like everybody leave me alone, right? Like that's really how it feels. Like the isolation actually has become like almost a gift for me, but it shifts who I've become. I should actually say it like this. Going through this has shifted the way that I've become, who I've become because of the isolation. I have been forced to dive deep inside of me. And so like the awakening that I've had in the isolation, there have been a few times in my life where I've had a spiritual awakening and it's notable. And this was a season that I went through. Like it's actually brought me into a place like that, which I have to be grateful for because I don't know that I would have looked as deep as I have inside of myself if I had not been sick.
We start living life and we become what we do every day, you know, and if what we do every day is building our career and living through life, and obviously you're quite social because of the network you have to build and everything, and that is part of who you are. And then when all that the carpet gets pulled from underneath you have to say, who am I? Like, what am I doing? Who am I now that who I identify as has suddenly been pulled away from me, which is such a hard place to go to. And the fact that you can say in quite a positive way that you went in and had quite a positive experience for what I'm gathering, as much as everything that's going on is a negative to push you into the positive. I would always say that we are not our circumstances. We are our reaction to our circumstances. And it sounds like you have really reacted quite positively to the obstacles that have put in your path. The next step is just getting back to life and controlling the symptoms and the things that are going on at the minute so that you can now progress on to the next step. But it's fabulous to hear that you yourself could say, look, I can look at the positive of what I'm going through, go into it and see what it can make me. So fair play to you, man. That's a beautiful thing to be able to share.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it because nobody sees what goes on. Nobody sees. And that's one of the things I learned about humanity is what I'm going through. And I have some underlying issues. I've been sick for, I think, 3.5 years now with some other things. Whenever I was at my worst or my hardest, I would always come across someone on social media or in my own life who was going through something that was way worse. And it just makes you kind of go, okay, all right, we're good. Everything's going to be okay. You know, because nothing I have can kill me right now because I know about it. So I'm okay. That's really kind of how I was able to break through that, because sitting in a pity party, which I did do for a couple of months, because sometimes it seems impossible to deal with. But then, talk to my friend who has MS and you're just like, oh, this is not as bad as that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's how I've been able to just keep getting up.
Life is all about perspective, and as horrible as it sounds, sometimes you can see someone else's life and you go, well, I would swap mine for theirs. And it gives you a renewed appreciation.
I'll tell you, I don't want your life.
You can't have it. You can't have it.
I don't want your ostomy bag, right? Like that is the most frightening thing to me as a part of this is like, am I going to end up with my rectum removed or part of my colon taken out or being on an ostomy bag? Because it's been so long. And you just think, how can you be so sick for so long and not have something go south and go the other direction? Luckily that's not happened to me.
Yeah, having the knowledge of what's out there and educating yourself. And as you said, you have to advocate for yourself and you have to educate yourself. You can't just you can't go to the doctor and say, the doctor said this is what I have to do, and this is all I'm going to do. You have to take what they say, go learn more for yourself, figure out your own body, because there's no such thing as a blanket statement when it comes to IBD. Someone to say like, oh, this drug works great for everyone. No, just like there's no such thing as blanket statements. We're all completely individual. Even when it comes to diet and food, what might work for me might not work for you. And as you said about the cannabis, that works for you might not work for someone else. But it's just finding what works for you and advocating for yourself. Now, I just want to dive into your own journey, because you did mention before about how strongly you have to advocate for yourself. What moments brought that knowledge up for you?
I think for me, it started when I first started to get sick with other things. There was this period of 18 months where nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And I was just I had never experienced a disease in my body like this and some sort of chronic illness. And I didn't know what to do. So I just trusted every doctor that I went on. And then I woke up and realized I have been on 19 rounds of antibiotics and they still haven't figured anything out. Or better yet, what I did was in reverse. I literally I had a doctor who figured out what was going on, immediately went on drugs to fix the problem. And within 30 days, all those other issues calmed down. And then I looked back and was like, I have been on how many drugs? And I was on so many drugs just getting through that healing process. And in the middle of all of that, I had a surgery. I had the hemorrhoidectomy and my body didn't heal from it. Like to this day, the muscle is not fully functional. I am not healed. And it's been 3 years this May. And if they had just asked one question, and I don't want to get into all of that, but if they'd have just asked one question, I would have started healing a lot faster from everything else. And they would have figured it out a lot sooner. But I woke up one day and realized I had something like 29 doctors, and I had been on, at that point, like 15 rounds of antibiotics, and I still was having, like, they could not solve anything. That ended up putting me in the hospital. I started to understand, you go to the ER, they run tests, and if your numbers are a certain level, right? If your infection markers are this or this, then they admit you into the hospital, and then they give you drugs that can only be put in your body intravenously. I didn't know that. So then you go to the hospital for a few days and they burn out infections. And so at that point, I know people are going to be like, oh my God, but I started putting my medical stuff into ChatGPT going, what the crap? And how do I do this? And then I started understanding about asking doctors I understood 2 things. The first thing is I have like an LLM that has all of my medical records and tests and everything. So I could run up a chart and go, what has my calprotectin level been for the past 3 years? And boom, 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 I get all of those tests, right? And please run a current report. I'm going to see the gastro doctor. These are my symptoms. This is what's going on. This is where I think we need to go. Here are my latest tests. But I get this like printout, and my gastro doctor literally said to me, I wish all of my patients would do this, because in that I ask chat. Well, I don't use chat anymore because we're done with chat, on to Claude. But Claude and Gemini now. But I asked chat, what are 4 to 5 different things that this could be? And then in the conversation, it would say, it could be this. If you were a doctor, what would you test for? And then I would get some things. And then when I started taking that into doctors, they started going, oh, well, it's definitely not SIBO. It's definitely not this because of this. And it's definitely not this because of this. It could be that. So let's test for that. And I started to realize I was kind of unintentionally guiding my own doctors. And I always preface that when I give them this and go, look, I know this is internet research. I know I'm stupid, but that I'm just a human and I don't know anything about medicine. But what I do know is my experience. And my experience dictates that if I don't advocate for myself in this way, then this could lead to another 6 months of me being sick. So, and they really, really like that. So I highly recommend having your health records in a safe place in a large language model. I've used things like Poppy AI and Gemini and Chat. But that has helped me a lot.
Completely. I completely agree of using the technology that we have at our fingertips now as an addition to your own Medicare completely, because the more information you can bring to your doctor, obviously they only have a certain amount of time to view your chart and see you, but the more details and cut the bullshit, essentially, information you can give them, they can paint a better picture. And then obviously they can say to you, well, from our knowledge, we can say we're going to rule out this, rule out that, like from your own experience. So keeping detailed accounts of your own life to really paint the picture, because it could be 3 years forward where you look back and go, we learned that from this and that's why I'm better here now, so advocating for yourself in that sort of sense and keeping detailed records is unbelievable advice for people, and you have just shown from your lived experience the importance of it.
And the thing is if you come in with like your big stack of papers and tests, then they're sitting there doing this, right? But if you go in with 1 sheet, maybe 2, my last one was 6 pages long, but because it was just so much going on. And if you do that, then that helps consolidate the actual appointment.
So Levi, as you mentioned, you're based in Las Vegas. So as a European, I have a bare knowledge of the American healthcare system compared to the system here. Would you mind diving into your experience with it?
So I think we all know, like, the American healthcare system is literally like fucked. There's nothing you can do about it. So here's how our insurance works. First of all, you've got your premium. Insurance companies, they basically run our government, essentially. We're never going to have universal health care because the corporations are in control, right? We're never going to get what you get because there are men making a whole lot of money. So what you have to understand about American healthcare is you have your premium. Those premiums are right now are astronomical. Like families of 4 are paying upwards of $1,500 a month just to have healthcare. But then you have your deductible. And those deductibles are now $3,000, $4,000, $6,000. So essentially, before you can ever get coverage, okay, you are paying, if I just do math, let's say it's $1,000 a month for your family. And that honestly is being gracious. So you're spending $12,000 a year plus your $6,000 deductible. You have to spend $18,000 before you ever get coverage. And most insurance coverages are only going to cover 80% of that until you reach what's called your maximum payout. And usually if your deductible's like 6, let's say that's 10. So essentially you're going to have to spend $12,000 a year plus $10,000 in order to get healthcare coverage. So if you're not like sick with a disease or having a catastrophic injury, you are paying a lot every month for your health insurance. And if you have to go to the doctor, okay, $6,000 deductibles. It is insane. But we do have something here called the Affordable Care Act, which was essentially Obama's way of consolidating healthcare to make it cheaper for Americans. And what happened, all of the white men, the white people in Congress that called themselves Republicans, they just hated Obama. And so he passed that bill and he forced it through. Because of how government works, he had to make a lot of concessions on things. And they would be like, fine, we'll sign it if. So that bill ended up becoming this gigantic, huge, massive bill because there were so many people were fighting it so hard. They were like, okay, we'll allow you this, but you can't have that. So we ended up with this thing called the Affordable Care Act, and it caused so much division in our country. The Republicans that are in the government literally said out loud, right after it was passed, we will do everything to block, stop, and try to cancel and effectively ruin this entire product. But because it's a bill, it got signed into law, they aren't allowed to just eliminate it. So since that passed in like maybe 2011, something like that, like there's still a massive fight in 2026 about that one bill. And what that bill does is um, it brings down your deductibles and your payments. And if you have certain income levels, then it brings down your deductibles and your out-of-pocket maximums. So I did some finagling and I got mine down. Because of these underlying conditions that I have some drugs that I take that cost about $5,600 a month. But here's where I got the system works for me. I found a nonprofit that pays for the copay on the drug. So the drug is $5,600. My copay is like 20% or 25% or whatever it is. I don't know. Maybe, it's 50% on that particular drug. So I would owe $2,300. And this nonprofit pays that deductible for me. They front load and give me 3 months drug supply at once. So after the second month of the drugs, which happened in January, my deductible has been met. My out-of-pocket has been met. So now my insurance is covered at 100%. Now, if I finagle and work the system, everything's covered. And so I go in for a colonoscopy, everything's covered, and I don't pay anything. The surgery center called me the other day and they were like, hey, we need to get your deductible. Can you give us a card? And I was like, I don't have a deductible. And they were like, yes, you do. And I was like, no, I don't. Call my insurance back. And they were like, you're right. I'm very lucky that way. But people who are going through what I'm going through, if you have to go on a drug like Skyrizi, like you can get Skyrizi in your country for free. In our country, it costs $22,000 for every infusion. But of course, there is a system, a company that pays for that drug. But what you give them is all of your medical history. You give them all of your surveys, all of this information about you and your experience on the drug. I'm lucky that there are people out there who are not. And most of those people are people that cannot in any way afford to pay for healthcare, much less groceries. So there are people living like that, like I have to live without any help.
Yeah, like it can really force you to nearly the poverty line, especially if you have a family and, you know, there's a lot of different bills coming in, mortgages, different things like that. And then you throw the burden of health on top of it and the insurance that comes with it. Like, I'm sure there's families that are in serious debt trying to strive for health for a family member. There's so many different cogs in the wheel there that can just cause so many different problems. And all it takes is one to pop out for the whole thing to fall apart. I know from what you've said there, you obviously had to do a lot of research and a lot of figuring out to get into the position you're in now. That can be quite taxing on the mind, even though it is sorted now, thankfully, and positively. For someone who's listening to this and is based in America and they're kind of at the start of their own journey and they're trying to figure things out, what advice would you have for them?
Wow. Like, I don't know how to answer that because I'm in this position because of these underlying conditions and having my healthcare kind of maxed out at the beginning of every year. Really am in a different position than most people. I would say it's important to understand 3 angles of being sick and figuring out how to deal with it. The first one is your doctor. The second one is your own health, your own physical body health. And the third part is your spiritual health. I feel like all 3 come together. There are people that get diseases and get sicknesses and have injuries and things that have nothing to do with anything. But more often than not, the reason we have shoulder pain or back pain or gut pain or hand pain or head pain or eye pain is more than likely there is some sort of spiritual reason for that. And I have found that for me, making sure that I am on top of things with my doctors and on top of things with healthcare, doing my research, and also remaining humble enough to know I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to medical school. I respect you, right? Sure, let's try that. I don't feel comfortable with that. That's too many drugs in my body. Is there anything else we can do? Because at one point I was taking like something like 10 pills a day for many different things and still ending up in the hospital and they didn't know why. Right. So, I think what I've learned is you've got, when you take care of this situation with your doctor, when you understand the relationship and what your doctor's job is, right? My gastro doctor said to me, I don't know about supplements. I don't do supplements. I don't know. You're on that on your own. That's literally what he said. And I was like, okay. So now I know my gastro doctor says, hey, what drugs do we need? Do we need surgery? Do we need this? Right? Is this drug working? In the middle, understanding like everybody's IBD is different. I think we both can agree that everybody's food intake needs to be different. We have no clue. There's no solid answer, right? But figuring out what your body needs from the physical perspective is most important. And probably the biggest answer to that is rest. And then on the spiritual side, really diving deep. I love getting Reiki, and I have a really amazing Reiki healer here in Vegas that has helped me connect with my spirit and opened me up for more emotional healing, recovery from traumas, recovery from just the 3.5 years of being sick. And when I focus on that, it opens my eyes up to things about my body and what my body needs. It gives me ideas and thoughts and to talk with my doctor. So I think understanding the difference of those three things, which really, if you think about it, we are mind, spirit, and body. You've got your mind, which is your doctor, and you've got your body, which is your physical, and then you've got your spiritual healing. When you really focus on all three of those things, for me, I've found, even though my journey has been long and has been hard, and yesterday was like, we didn't talk about that yet, but yesterday was like just utter nightmare for me. But I was able to come home because of my inner healing, because of me being healed spiritually. I was able to come home and go, I am extremely angry about this. And now I'm going to feel this anger, and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to learn how to let it go, and I'm going to let it go. And then after I'm done letting it go, I'm going to move forward. There was a time in my life where I couldn't do that. There was a time in my life where I would get mad, and I would be mad for 3 or 4 days, and it would ruminate in my brain. And then I would be mad at my doctor, and then I would be pissed off because I couldn't exercise or because I couldn't eat vegetables. Like I would eat a salad, and all of a sudden I would be bleeding again. And you're like, what are you talking about? I can't eat salad. If there's anything I'm going to say to anyone that is going through this, is you have to understand each of those three things, compare it to your body, and work diligently to find healing in all three of those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree as well with the Reiki. It's finding the things to put into your toolbox that can help you and help the whole system. As you said, spirit, body, mind, the mental and the physical are so, you can't have one without the other. Finding the tools to make sure that you ensure you look after yourself in the whole system to try and improve the physical health is 100% great advice for people. I just want to dive back into, first of all, what happened to you yesterday. I'll get you to explain to people what went on there. And then after that, I want to circle back to the bit of the miracle that you had, because that kind of brings us back into the spiritual and the trust side of things. So I want to dive into what happened there in the last couple of days for us.
I don't love to talk about certain things, especially public, right? Just because for stigma reasons, right? But I think you and I probably both know that when you have IBD, there's 2 drugs that they give you. One is dicycline, and that's like 4 tablets 4 times a day. And it's supposed to always help with the inflammation. It did absolutely nothing for me. And so the only thing that I found that gives me relief in my gut is marijuana. And I can literally be in so much pain. My gut is so distended and hard and big and blown up, and I have diarrhea, and the only thing that helps is smoking weed. And usually within 5 to 7 minutes, I can literally go, oh, and have relief. So yesterday, what happened was I had a colonoscopy scheduled, and I was naked in the gown, IV in my hand, right? And I've gone through all of the procedures, and the anesthesiologist walks up and asks me, when was the last time you ate? When was the last time you drank? Where, how much sleep did you get last night? Did you take, what medications did you take this morning? All of this kind of stuff. And he asked me if I smoked, and I said, no. I said, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I do smoke marijuana. When was the last time you smoked marijuana? Sunday, because the guidelines in my book said no smoking 24 hours. And he goes, okay, cool. And he walks away, and the nurse comes in and she's like, okay, let's get your little warm fuzzy socks on and we're going to get you going. I was supposed to get a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. So getting it from both ends. And we were supposed to find the problems and that were happening. We wanted to see where the colitis was going. We got the calprotectin test, and I had responded and gone down by 50%, which was amazing. And so we needed to check the colitis, but we also needed to see why I was having severe pain on the right side of my colon. So it was very important. So Sunday night, I had my last meal. I did not eat it all on Monday. All I had was clear liquids. And I did the bowel prep, which for me is nerve-wracking. And going to the bathroom, honestly, is quite normal for us. So, I don't care about that part. But it was pretty intense. And I get all the way up to the point where I'm about to be wheeled in the room. And the nurse comes and says, I'm sorry, but the anesthesiologist is not going to perform your procedure. And I was like, why? And it turns out that, and my doctor explained to me that under the Gastro Society, there's no limitations or issues about smoking marijuana at all. But recently, the Anesthesiologist Society, or whatever it is, came up with a general rule of thumb of 72 hours before surgery. And I had smoked 48 hours before surgery. And so he would not do the surgery. So I went through all of that, only to have it canceled as they were wheeling me in. So now I'm doing another bowel prep today, no more food for today, and I go in tomorrow and we try it again. So I've now been 4 solid days of bowel prep, barely eating. Sometimes I want to get on Instagram and just scream and be so mad and just and bitch at people. And I can't blame that guy. He wanted to be careful. I get it. But my doctor literally I looked at him and I said, you see me in appointments where I'm kind and I'm quiet and I'm nice and I come in prepared and I want to have an educated discussion. Now you are seeing me at my worst. Now you are seeing me in my chronic pain that I've been in for 3 years. Right. And I was crying, and he was my doctor, bless his heart, he just grabbed me and hugged me and was like, I am so, so sorry. Let's figure this out. And he kind of walked me through, moved people around, got me scheduled for tomorrow morning. But that's what happened yesterday. And it's things like that that are very infuriating about the American healthcare system. There's the biggest problems that you have. You have back office people, front office people, and your doctor. And so it's really hard to find a great back office team, a great doctor, and a great front office team. And so I found that you have to call all the time. So my doctor says, okay, we need to have this referral sent through. We need to be on this drug. We need to do this procedure. And I look at the person that's going to be doing the coordinating of all of that. And I go, hey there, just so you know, I'm going to bug you about this and we're going to make sure that it happens. And they're a little shocked. And I go, I just want to let you know ahead of time that I'm going to advocate for myself, and I'm going to come in heavily researched, and I'm going to make sure and do a double check on all of your work. And it's not because you're not good at your job. It's because in general, every single time I go through any situation like this, someone drops a ball and it costs me a month. It cost me 2 months, 3 months. One doctor, it cost me 1.5 years of pain and blood because of his misdiagnosis. And that's the other thing, is misdiagnosis. There's no, hey, we're looking at these 4 things. We need to rule these differentials out. And here's how we're going to do it step by step by step by step. Here's the answer. No one does that. They all go, oh, this is what this is. This is what this is. Vegas is a really small town. So there just seems to be an air of, well, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for forever. I went to go get a second opinion from a gastro doctor, and I literally, you can hear anybody who has IBD go, oh, you go to a new doctor. The first thing is, oh, need to have a colonoscopy. Well, you get $11,000 for that. Right. So I went to go get another opinion. That was his first thing. He just handed me a photocopied list of FODMAPs and was like, try taking some of these out of your diet and see how that feels. And let's do a colonoscopy in next week. And I was like, just never going back. I'm just not going back.
It's beyond frustrating. To take from that is you have to be your own advocate. You have to stand up for yourself, and you have to be the one to connect the dots for you, because no one is going to do it for you. And being your own personal savior is the best way I can describe it, because as you said, someone drops the ball and it falls back on you. So you have to be the one to make sure that pushing. And sometimes people can say like, oh, I don't want to come across too pushy or whatever like that. But you have to. When you advocate for your health, you really have to be the one to put yourself first. And sometimes come across as, maybe a little bit overbearing, probably the wrong word, but just to get yourself true and yourself across, and make sure that you don't fall between the cracks, because when it happens, it can knock you out of sync completely and have such a detrimental effect on your life.
I could not agree more, but I want to shift the story on that. I think we don't need to be advocates for our own healthcare. I think that we are in charge of our own healthcare. Right? And I think when we're an advocate and we have to stand up for ourselves, it automatically puts a sword and a shield in our hand. And I don't know that we need that. I think when I roll in to my gastro doctor with a complete detailed report and he goes, oh my God, this is amazing. That's being an advocate for yourself, right? And so what I did was I assisted the doctor in his decisions, right? And then I challenged what he said. Like, he didn't even know that after 2 months on Skyrizi, you check and it should be a 50% reduction. That is your marker. And if it's not 50%, then your body's not reacting. Well, 2 months after, I was exactly at 50%. And so last week he was saying, well, you're not reacting to the Skyrizi because you still have pain. Then we get the test results back and I tell him, no, this is what the situation really is. And he goes, oh, well, this is great. I just taught my doctor something, right? How did I teach my doctor something? That doesn't make sense. It makes sense because I just have to be in charge of my healthcare, right? You have to, if you got a referral, you look at that person behind the front desk and say, when are you going to submit this to my insurance? Okay. And then they say, I'm going to submit it this afternoon. Fantastic. I'm going to give it 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, I'm going to call my insurance and say, did you receive that? Can you push that through? And how long will that take? When should I expect this to be finished? And then you go, okay, what is your extension? I'm going to follow up at the end of that time period. And then you follow up at the end of that time period, right? That is being an advocate for yourself without a sword and a shield. That's actually being an advocate with a silver platter to everyone that you encounter. My doctor, he did 10 colonoscopies yesterday and he's doing 10 tomorrow, right? So he has 10 people. He has 20 people every week that he's doing colonoscopies for, 20 people that he's trying to do care for. And he has a 20-minute window to talk to me, right? So that's what, to me, being an advocate is understanding, hey, I got to take care of this myself.
I love that, like flipping the narrative slightly. It's still advocacy, absolutely. But as you said, you're in charge. You're taking executive action to make sure your case goes as well as it possibly can.
Let me just say this though, because people think that every person on the other end of the line is an enemy. I feel like that sometimes when I pick up the phone. I'm calling to argue with someone. I'm calling with my defenses already up, right? I have to work on that in my own heart because I don't need to live with that energy in my life, right? So I just call and go, hey, this is what's going on. Nope. Yep. We're going to do this. Yep. I'm going to follow up. It's very easy to really think that these people are my enemies, and they're not. They're all overworked. They're underpaid. They're undereducated. And some of them don't even know how to care about human beings. When I call my gastro doctor, literally when his front desk answers the phone, they act like they have never cared about a human in their life. Like they've never spoken to anyone, like they don't care, like they are giving birth at that moment and they're trying to talk to me. That's literally what it sounds like. They do not care. So I do things like every time I go into the hospital, they're wheeling me in and I'm on my phone and I'm ordering a dozen donuts and sending it to the nurse's station, and then within an hour, they're literally like, oh my God, we love you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Right. So you're there for 3 or 4 days, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, and literally they're just taking care of you. And every couple of days, I just send another dozen donuts and they're like, oh my God, you're the best. You're the best. Right. So it's all about the approach of how you handle it. And I fail at it all the time, but at least that's what I try.
No, 100% smart maneuver. And as you said, it's all about your approach. Your energy comes from you. And then the energy you give out can be the energy you get back. So no, that's definitely great advice for people. Before I head to the final question, is there any advice you'd like to share on anything that we haven't broached yet?
Honestly, I think we've really touched on some really good advice. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
from my experience, that's all that I know. I need advice. I need help. I'm alone in this. I don't have people to talk to me about this stuff. So I'm just talking my experience and seeing how that
Yeah, no,
can help
you're a
someone
fantastic
else.
speaker. Yeah, absolutely. And you've shared amazing advice. And thank you so much for providing the insight from your experience and sharing it with us, because that's what this podcast is all about. It's all about sharing our lived experience so we can guide one another. But one question I love getting the perspective on of everyone that I ask it to is, what does happiness mean to you?
Oh, that is a loaded question. I think I really genuinely don't even know how to answer that. And I think it's because just this moment in my life is just so stretched so thin that I'm just like, I navigate my own emotions and I choose what that is. I've been sick for so long, it feels like I don't even know what it's going to feel like when I'm better, you know? So I don't know. What is happiness to me? Making money? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that today.
That's completely understandable. I find when I ask the happiness question, everyone has a very different perspective on it, garnered from what they're going through in their life at that moment. And that is your lived truth, 100%. Hopefully there's going to be in the future a very different defined answer to that question, because you're advocating for yourself, and you're really on the road, I hope, to really get in control of these symptoms and taking back control of your life. So I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing everything with us.
Thank you so much.
Massive thank you to Levi for coming on and sharing his story. Conversations like this keep reminding us that sharing our experience can help someone else who's feeling alone. As always, thank you so much for listening. If this episode resonated with you, please like, follow, share, subscribe. And if you haven't already, please drop us a rating. Thank you very much. Next week is World IBD Day, and because of this, it's going to be a special double episode week. These are two really, really interesting episodes for me, because what we do is we look into the pitfalls of being a man with chronic illness and a woman with chronic illness in two separate episodes. As much, of course, as the journeys are similar, there are differences in the societal pressures and the expectations. Both episodes are extremely powerful. For the men's episode, two previous guests, Oliver and Owen, will be with me, and then Thursday's episode will be with Sarah O'Connor and Terry Brannigan, who are both previous guests. See you then.